the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Welcome to Marriage Unhindered. I'm your host, Doug Hinderer, licensed marriage and family therapist. So today we're going to deal with the topic of lack of trust, that my heart is safe with you. Has your spouse ever said anything about you to others that has hurt you? Or have you ever said something, have you ever revealed your spouse's defects to other people, perhaps your friends or family, right? That hurt your spouse? Or have you found a way to heal after being embarrassed by something your spouse said or did that put you in a bad light? We're going to have another visit with our good friend Alice von Hilde from her book, By Love Refined, Letters to a Young Bride. So let's see what Alice has to say. And this letter is titled, What a Moving Talk Michael and I Had. So Michael is the husband, Julie is the wife, the young wife. Alice starts off, Dear Julie, how happy I am to learn that you and Michael had a soul-to-soul encounter soon after I left, and that since then, your marriage has gained a new glow. Michael revealed to you wounds he received as a child, but you don't have to apologize for not giving me details about them. Your comment was sufficient. Quote, to see the wounds of another person is a call to love him more, end quote. The details should remain secret between the two of you. Okay. Let's pause there for a minute. And I think Alice makes a really important point. It's really critical for couples to build a life of total confidence and trust. This isn't easy, because we're both imperfect and flawed, and we sometimes say or do things that hurt each other. But that needs to be our goal, that you can rely on me to protect you, to protect your heart, to protect your reputation, protect your image, etc. Opening up about childhood wounds is very risky business. In doing so, you need encouragement and support. You need to be validated. You need to know that you are worthy as a human being, that you have infinite value as a son or daughter of God. But when you open up about pains from childhood, wounds, things that still haunt you to this day, you run the risk of perhaps not being understood by your spouse, or of having your spouse not pay full attention, being distracted or, looking at their phone or TV. Or you run the risk of your spouse really not appreciating the gravity of what you are sharing as you're opening your heart to some really deep things. Your spouse just may not get it. They may not understand your vulnerability at that time, and so they may not really validate you. Or you run the risk of just being told by your spouse, hey, it's not that big a deal, just get over it and move on. That's not very validating, and that actually just kind of rips part of the scab off of the, off of the wound. So, when you are revealing some inner hurts, you're giving ammunition to your spouse that your spouse could, use against you, either at the time or at some point when they're angry, or bring it up later. And that's risky business. By definition, those wounds that you have resulted from someone else who hurt you very deeply. And to expose those wounds to another person is frightening, because that person can then pile on, add to the hurt, right? So it's a very difficult thing. And opening yourself, sharing childhood wounds, sharing past traumas, tragedies, and injuries, feeling safe to do that is a real sign of confidence in your spouse. And so if you feel free to do that, if your spouse feels free to do that with you, that's a really positive sign that your marriage is in a great place and there's great safety there in your marriage. All right, so Alice goes on. Seems to me that it belongs to the pact of love that we seal tightly within our souls the secrets that another person has shared with us. All the more so when this self-revelation takes place between two who love each other deeply. It's true that no one can measure the wounds that spouses can inflict upon each other in the intimacy of marriage. But it's also true that no one can measure the incredible joy and peace that they bestow on each other in a marriage based on complete trust and full intimacy. Which is why I must again remind you that your marriage, like all great things in life, is a risk, a deed of daring. You'll recall that Plato said that what is worthwhile is never easy, right? So, marriage is risky. Hearts break in marriage, right? Because you're so vulnerable because you've given yourself 100% to another human being. And, perhaps it's better that couples don't appreciate the full measure of risk involved before they get married, right? So it's better to go into it a little bit blind, because if you really knew what the future held, you may not take the risk. But I think God knows what he's doing when he amps the infatuation and kind of blinds us to reality a little bit as we go into marriage. And I think that's actually a good thing. I really like the Plato quote, "What is worthwhile is never easy." And, marriage is very worthwhile. It's very worthwhile. For most of us, it's our path to sanctity. It's the vocation we've been called by God himself and been given to us specifically from God. As my wife says, a vocation is not a call to do something. It's a call to be something. So I'm not called to do marriage. I'm called to be marriage. I'm called to be a husband, be a wife, right? But all that also means it's going to be difficult because it's of great value. And so it can't be easy, right? No one gets into heaven, without hard work and suffering. And a good marriage requires both of those things. You've got to work hard at it, but it's worth it. And there's going to be suffering in marriage because you're married to an imperfect person, and that's going to bring some suffering with it. That's not a bad thing. That can be, that's part of the path to holiness and sanctity, right? And, a good marriage requires both hard work and suffering. So, and unfortunately, in my work, I often have to deal with the wounds that spouses have inflicted on each other when they violate this trust and this intimacy of soul that Alice was talking about. When this trust is violated, the pain can be almost unbearable. To have your most intimate secrets revealed to someone else can be really very difficult, right? And once that trust is broken, it can really be hard to get it back. Trust it's hard to rebuild, right? Emotional safety is perhaps the most important quality of good marriages. You could make an argument there's other things, but I think emotional safety is at the very top of that list. Your spouse needs to see you as the safest person in the world. There are 4 behaviors that erode trust. Criticism. If I'm always pointing out what's wrong with you, boy, you're not feeling too safe for me. Contempt, which is anger and mean-spirited words and hurtful, cutting remarks. That really destroys trust in a marriage. Stonewalling, where I just shut down, walk away, I ignore you. Well, man, I'm not feeling too well loved if you just walk away from me. And defensiveness, if you keep defending yourself and blaming me for everything that's wrong, well, boy, I'm not feeling you too open, and I'm not feeling safe if everything is my fault and you're not owning your piece of it, okay? So stay away from those. Gottman calls those the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse: criticism, contempt, stonewalling, and defensiveness. Those will erode trust and really hurt your marriage. There are 3 behaviors that nurture trust. One is affirmation, affirming your spouse as a wonderful human being, and actually saying that, saying, listen, you're a great human being. I am so happy to be married to you. I am so happy that you're the person that God picked out from the beginning of time for me to go through life with. Affirm their qualities. You're kind, you're generous, you're gentle. Make a list of all of your spouse's qualities and share that list. Number 1. Number 2 is empathy. And this is, one way to look at this is emotional affirmation. This is where I affirm that you're right to feel the way you feel. I can see how that would have hurt you. Or, boy, your pain makes perfect sense to me. How can I help you, right? So affirmation, affirming your spouse, empathy, connecting emotionally, validating their emotions. And then 3rd, not disclosing the defects. Keep the defects and lock them in the vault of your own heart. And don't tell other people what's wrong with your spouse. No good can come from that, to be sure. All right. So there you have it. Thank you, Alice. Thank you for your comments on maintaining trust and growing trust in a marriage and validating each other. And there you go. Let's go out to Cincinnati. Let's go to Charlie. Hello, Charlie.
Hi. Hi, Doug. How's it going this evening?
Life is wonderful. Thanks. What can I do for you?
I'm trying to understand the distinction of detraction, giving information that really doesn't need to be given, versus giving information in order to have support. And the context around that is, in my marriage situation, I caused a lot of hurt for my wife when we were dating early in marriage, and really very awful behavior ways that hurt her very deeply.
Okay.
And a lot of that was very hidden. And so it's only until many years later that we're getting the right kind of help and trying to navigate the right kind of help. And
Great.
Some of that involves her being able to share with family, to say, like, these are things that I went through and that I suffered through with Charlie. And so there's a certain kind of struggle of, well, how much is the right amount to share in kind of family relational context versus with a therapist or whatnot. So it's just a lot to parse out and making sure that it's not just rehashing things that are painful just because they hurt, or getting the right kind of help, if that makes sense.
Well, it does, for sure. And I think, I certainly getting some professional help, getting to a therapist is really what you want to do, because you can lay all the dirt, all the mud, all that stuff out there, and the therapist can help you navigate that. Priest might be able to help you navigate that too, but I think I would encourage you to get to a good therapist. As far as turning to family and friends, I guess, a couple rules of thumb that might be helpful is kind of on a need-to-know basis, right? And so, for instance, let's say, 5 years ago, she had a big falling out, got in a big fight with her mother about something. And they haven't really patched it up, but she got in a fight with her mother because she just got in a big fight with you because you just found out you had done something really stupid that hurt her. Well, then to go back to mom and say, you know what, Mom, 5 years ago, we got in a big fight. And then the problem is I had just found out that my husband had done this really dumb thing, and I didn't mean to take it on you. So I think, on a need-to-know basis, where it's important to heal perhaps relationships with her family where she might have hurt them, but the stresses and strains of the marriage contributed to that, I think that makes sense. But detraction is more just telling other people, what's wrong with my spouse, just to tell them. They can't fix it. They can't help anything, and they don't really need to know, but I'm angry at you, and I'm going to tell people, what a jerk you were. That's detraction, and no good's going to come out of that. So I think you share to the degree you need to bring about healing and perhaps some understanding, but you certainly don't share more than you absolutely have to, especially with family. Because, the idea is, you're going to rebuild this marriage. You're going to fix this thing, and the two of you are going to be more in love than you ever have been if you get good help. But the family is still going to say, I don't know about Charlie. I think he's still kind of a jerk. I don't know that I can forgive him, right? Where she does and moves on, you build a marriage. So you got to be careful with family what you share about your spouse, because they might not be as forgiving, as your wife is. Does that make sense?
Thank you. And that's the other part, that to really navigate the you were saying the real need to know. It's trying to identify what is needed in order to get healing. And so there's a certain amount of, if we take sins and we put them in the light, there's healing that happens in that, but it's one thing to put things to light, I guess, or bring it to the light in the right way, I guess. So it's still something we're trying to struggle with, but I appreciate the idea of trying to identify that right amount. So.
Good. Yeah. It's tough. It's tough. There's no, magic formula to plug in. And I think part of it is, why do you want to share with family? Is it to bring about healing, or is it to hurt you, right? To say, well, look at this, knucklehead that I married. So is it to bring healing or pain? And only on a need-to-know basis is kind of my thought on that. So,
all right, well, thank you very much,
Charlie. Good luck to you. All right, I'm glad you're working on overcoming those past mistakes and building a strong marriage at this point. And God bless your wife for hanging in here with you and working with you on that too. So, good for you. We always end with a memorare to our Blessed Mother to help whatever couple is going to be in dire straits here later tonight. Please join me. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thy intercession was left unaided. Inspired with this confidence, we fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, our Mother. To thee do we come, before thee we stand sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not our petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer us. Amen. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks. I hope that you picked up a pointer or two that can help improve your marriage. A solution to everything that's hindering your marriage. Final Solutions right here, Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Central Time, Relevant Radio. This entire episode of Marriage Unhindered is on the updated Relevant Radio app. The Relevant Radio app is completely free and updated daily with fresh articles, podcasts, and prayers.